Well, welcome back to Whole Bible Study with Taddy Noy. I'm so grateful to be walking through the Bible with you today. We've been following Joseph's incredible journey from betrayal to redemption, and we're now at the point where the entire family of Israel is about to be reunited. If you're just joining us, Joseph has revealed himself to his brothers. Pharaoh has invited them to settle in Egypt, and now Jacob, the patriarch, is preparing to make the journey south with his entire household. Let's read Genesis chapter 46 together. Genesis 46, and we're reading from the NIV version. So Israel set out with all that was his, and when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he replied. "I am God, the God of your father," he said, "but do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons took their father Jacob and their children and their wives and in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport him. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters, all his offspring. These are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his descendants who went to Egypt. Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, the sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ahad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan had died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez, Herzon, and Hamul. The sons of Ishchar, Tola, Puah, Jushab, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jalil. These were the sons of Leah, born to Jacob in Paddan Aram. Besides his daughter Dinah, these sons and daughters of his were 33 in all. The sons of Gad, Zaphon, Hagi, Suni, Ezbon, Eri, Orodi, and Erelai. The sons of Asher, Imana, Ishva, Ishvi, and Berai. Their sister was Sarah, the son of Berah, Heber, and Machalil. These were the children born of Jacob to Zilpah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Leah, 16 in all. The sons of Jacob's wife, Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. In Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim were born to Joseph by Arsnath, the daughter of Pontiphera, priest of On. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Beker, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ea, Rosh, Mupin, and Hupim, and Ard. These were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 in all. The son of Dan, Hershon, the son of Nephalti, Jazil, Guni, Jazir, and Shillim. These were the sons born to Jacob by Bilhah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Rachel, 7 in all. All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, those were the direct descendants, not counting his sons' wives, numbered 66 persons. With the 2 sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen. When they arrived in the region of Goshen, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, He threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and speak to Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were living in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, they tend livestock, and they brought along their flocks and herds and everything they own. When Pharaoh calls you in and asks, 'What is your occupation?' you should answer, 'Your servants have tended livestock from our boyhood on, just as our fathers did.' Then you will be allowed to settle in the region of Goshen. For all the shepherds and are detestable to the Egyptians." Now for the deep dive in Genesis 46. Genesis 46 opens with a quiet but powerful moment. Jacob, now an old man, begins a journey that will mark his final major transition in his life. After years of sorrow, exile, and uncertainty, he sets out for Egypt, not just to reunite with Joseph, but to anchor the future of Israel's story in a foreign land. But before he arrives in Egypt, Jacob does something critical. He stops in Beersheba, and a spiritually significant place where both Abraham and Isaac had built altars. It's there, in the southernmost edge of the promised land, that Jacob offers sacrifices to God of his father Isaac. This act echoes back to the earlier generations. It's a way of anchoring itself. It's a way of anchoring himself in the covenant before stepping into the unknown. And in verse 2, God speaks to him in a vision at night, "Jacob, Jacob." The double calling is intimate, urgent, and sacred. We've seen it before. Abraham in Genesis 22, Moses in Exodus 3. It signals divine presence and commissioning. The Hebrew term used for vision here is merot, from the root raha, meaning to see. It implies more than physical sight. It's spiritual perception. Jacob isn't just dreaming, he's entering divine clarity. God tells Jacob, do not be afraid, go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there." And that reassurance carries weight. Egypt wasn't just a geographical shift, it was a theological challenge. God had promised the land of Canaan, and now Jacob is being led away from it. But here's the paradox. Sometimes the path to God's promise leads through unfamiliar terrain. Egypt would not be the end of the story, it would be the crucible that shapes Israel's identity. The phrase, "go down to Egypt," read mitzvah carries prophetic resonance. The Hebrew verb yarad, to go down, becomes a recurring theme in the biblical exile narratives. Exile is always a descent, both literally and spiritually, but the promise in verse 4, "I myself will go down with you, and I will surely bring you back again," anchors this descent in divine companionship. The double assurance, "I will go down with you," I will also bring you up again, bookends Israel's future exile and redemption. From verse 8 onward, we get a genealogy, a long list of names that traces Jacob's descendants. At first glance, it reads like a census, but it's so much more than a family roll call. These names establish tribal identity, inheritance lines, and the scope of God's promise. The number 70 in verse 27, all persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70, becomes symbolic throughout Jewish tradition. 70 represents completeness and the foundational core of Israel. In fact, ancient Jewish texts often connect this number to the idea of the 70 nations of the world, implying that Israel's identity, though small, is universally significant. There's also historical richness in the tribal breakdown. We see the sons of Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, and Bilhah, a reminder that this nation comes from a complicated web of relationships, not a perfect family unit. Yet God works through it all. The tribal divisions, which will later shape Israel's encampments, armies, and land allotments, all begin here. Then comes the emotional climax. Joseph and Jacob are finally reunited in verse 29. Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. The Hebrew for prepared here is asar, which can also mean to bind or harness. Joseph doesn't just ride out, he binds himself to this mission. The imagery is purposeful. It suggests readiness, determination, and honor. When they meet, Joseph falls on his father's neck and weeps a long time. The Hebrew finally says he wept on his neck a while longer. It's not a moment, it's a release of decades. Jacob's words, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face," reflect an ancient Hebrew idiom of contentment at life's fulfillment. It's not fatalism, it's peace. In some ways, it echoes Simeon's words in Luke 2:29. "Now, Lord, you can let your servant depart in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation." Seeing Joseph again brings closure to Jacob's story, but just as seeing Jesus brings closure to Simon's. The final verses of the chapter shift to a more strategic tone. Joseph coaches his family on what to say to Pharaoh. He tells them to identify as shepherds. This is significant because Egyptians despised shepherds, as stated in verse 34, and this would effectively keep the Hebrews separate from the Egyptian society. Joseph's instruction isn't just political, it's theological. He's preserving Israel's distinctiveness in a land that could easily swallow them culturally and spiritually. So the move to Goshen, while practical for livestock, is also symbolic. It's a space where set apart on the edge of Egypt, where Israel can grow without being absorbed. It anticipates the latter Exodus theme in the world, but not of it. Historically, this also mirrors Egyptian social customs. Foreigners were often given land in the northeastern delta region like Goshen because it was fertile but politically peripheral. It allowed Pharaoh to benefit from their labor without integrating them into deeply. Joseph uses this knowledge wisely to protect his people and to fulfill God's covenant in the midst of a foreign empire. Now for some final thoughts. Genesis 46 reminds us that transitions, even ones directed by God, often bring fear, dislocation, and complexity. But it also shows us that God meets us in those places, speaks clearly when we seek him, and walks beside us into the unknown. It's a chapter of arrival, but also of preservation. Jacob's family may be stepping into exile, but they're also stepping into growth. And in the quiet details, the altar at Beersheba, the tearful embrace, and the advice about shepherding, we're reminded that God's faithfulness lives not just in miracles, but in the movement of the story itself. Let's never forget, sometimes God leads us out of the land of promise only to prepare us for an even greater deliverance to come. What really stirs me in this chapter is how God shows up at the edge of change. Jacob was about to leave the land God promised, something that could have felt like abandoning the plan entirely. But instead of silence or confusion, God speaks gently, personally. He calls Jacob by name twice. That moment reminds me that even when I'm walking into unfamiliar territory, God doesn't leave me guessing. He meets me in the threshold moments, and he promises not only to be with me as I go, but to bring me back in his time. I'm also struck by Joseph's wisdom, the way he protects his family from being assimilated into Egypt by choosing Goshen and by naming their trade honestly. He's safeguarding the future of Israel. That kind of spiritual discernment, that awareness of the bigger picture, it inspires me. Sometimes being faithful isn't loud or flashy. Sometimes it's found in quiet strategy, in preserving identity, in making space for growth while holding on to who we are. I think about how often God leads us into places that don't look like the promise yet, and how important it is to stay rooted in him even when the landscape changes. If this chapter spoke to you in a way, or if something jumped out that I didn't touch on, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Let's keep the learning going from each other. Thank you so much for walking through this story with me. And we will see you tomorrow.